In the last video, I finished the shiplap siding and wired up the 12-volt electrical system. In this video, I'm going to start to build out my bed area as well as work on the two side benches. So let's get to it. I had just enough plywood left over from finishing the ceiling to cover the top part of this rear shelf. I ended up having to use multiple pieces for the bottom though. Since I was out of the larger plywood cutoffs, I ended up using multiple pieces to finish this out, but the angle, you probably will never see it, so plus when I install the trim, it's going to look just fine. So I'm using this old board from the scrap bin to trim out this shelf. I actually found this board on the side of the road a couple of years ago, and I figured I would use it. I like using old lumber on new projects. It is really old and weathered, but it's surprisingly really solid. The edges were pretty bad though, but due to the length that I needed, I was able to cut off the bad edges on both sides. Then I took my router and rounded over the edges and then sanded as much as I could without removing too much of the patina. I think it ended up looking pretty nice. And I had to rip that board to the right width, and I left it a little high on purpose because I wanted to create a fence to hold things on the shelf. Using these old scrap pieces, they do a couple of things. They save money and they give you a unique look as well. Okay, here I cleared off the bottom rear shelf. This is under the shelf I was just working on because I'm going to be starting to build out the bed area. This is where the bed's going to go, and then coming off of the sides, I'm going to start working on the benches. So just above that shelf, you can see that piece of skirting there. I was able to add some trim to that to dress it up a little bit, and I ended up putting everything that was on that bottom shelf on this shelf. And even with that slanted rear wall, it still holds quite a bit. Okay, here I started laying out the boards that I'm going to use to frame out the bench. I wanted to get an idea of how much storage area I'm going to have both inside the bench and behind the bench under the bed. And you'll be able to see how that looks here coming up. So here's the rough framing for the bench next to the door, and you can see how much room that I'm going to have inside the bench. And then you can see that little area looks like about an 18-inch square or cube of storage that will be under the bed. And the battery box is all framed in as well, with the top access to the battery compartment and the side access for the rear underbed storage. It's essentially a mirror image of the bench and storage area that I built on the other side. Okay, so here's a shot of both bench frames. The bed will come out just to the edge of the two bench storage boxes, and it'll also sit on top of that rear bump out area. So I cut this board out. I cut the bottom out so that it would fit inside and give a nice smooth floorboard across the whole inside of that bench. And I wanted to install it now before putting the sidewalls on. I figured it would be a lot easier to kind of slide it in from the side before I had those sidewalls on. And the side panels are on the bench next to the door now. And again, this area to the right of the box will be the permanent bed or underbed storage area. And the side panels are installed on the battery box as well. And I'm going to have to disconnect the battery, that whole area, because I've got to remove everything so that I can get the floorboard installed into that as well. Okay, so this view gives you an idea of what the layout's going to look like. The bump out area behind the bed, it's going to be under the bed, will be storage that will be accessed from the outside. That's a future project though. Okay, here I added some additional support, some bracing under the front edge of the bed. The area below is just the right width to put a trifold mattress in, so that's why I didn't have those braces go all the way down to the floor, because I'd be able to slide the trifold mattress in and can use the floor as a sleeping area as well if needed. Okay, so I've got this 3/4 inch piece of plywood set down. There's plenty of room in the center there to access the underbed storage. It goes behind the bench on both sides and then under the bed. So it's going to be a nice 18-inch deep, 6-foot wide storage area. And the bed platform, so the camper is 6 feet wide and the bed platform is 42 inches deep. So it's a decent size sleeping area. Okay, everything inside the box has been disconnected and removed, so I can start working on installing that floorboard into that bench. So the old platform is removed. I don't know if you remember seeing that. It was a piece of fiberboard that was sitting on the right side. And I'm going to have to redistribute the framing underneath so that I can have even support underneath that floorboard all the way across. Okay, the new floorboard is installed. You may have noticed previously that I did have the side panels up. I had to end up removing that back side, the panels on that back side, so that I could get that floorboard in. Okay, the battery tray's back in place and the batteries are hooked up again. And I've moved them over against that side wall. And I had to remove the fuse because I'm going to install a vent in that area that vents to the outside because these are wet batteries. They do off gas, and I need to have a nice way to vent any of that gas to the outside of the camper. Okay, so the hole is cut for the vent. I just used a 4-inch hole saw to make that cut. I started on the inside, and then when the center drill bit went completely through. I went on the outside and came back in. That way there eliminated any splintering on the outside. And I also checked some old photos so I could make sure that I didn't have any electrical wiring running through the wall at that point. And everything was good, so I was able to go ahead and drill my vent hole. Okay, so here's the vent from the outside. After attaching the screws, I ran a bead of silicone around the edge, and behind the flange there's a layer of screen that's a bug guard to keep the bugs out. And I ran a couple of beads of this weather strip cord behind the vent before installing it as well. This stuff works great for sealing against both wind and water. I also ran a bead of the weather strip cord around the vent on the inside to seal around the hole, and I ran a bead around the inside as well just to help hold the bug guard in place. Okay, so I vacuumed everything out, cleaned it up, and I was able to get the batteries back in place and hooked up. Then I reinstalled the fuse on the wall, but it's below the vent. Okay, so since I was able to place the vent right next to the batteries, I decided to create a separate storage area to the left of the battery box, just so that I could take advantage of that storage opportunity. Okay, back in the bed area, I installed some corner trim. You can see it going up in both of the rear corners. And then I moved to this platform. I didn't want the exposed 3/4 inch plywood causing any snags or splinters, so I wanted to run a piece of outside corner trim on that area as well. Cleans it up pretty nice. Okay, I also wanted to install the outside corner trim on the bench tops, so I've got them all cut, and this is just a dry fit here. I just wanted to see how it was going to look, or if I needed to make any adjustments. Here's another angle looking at that, and it turns out that it was really tight between the door and the bed, so I ended up cutting that back a little bit, only about 1/8 of an inch, but it did cause me to have to cut back that front side of the trim as well. So it's a good thing I did a dry fit. Okay, I made all the needed adjustments, and the outside trim is now installed on that bench top. And the bench tops are just sitting on top of the bench for now, because I still need to pick up a couple of piano hinges so that I can get that installed and have a nice hinged opening. Okay, on this the battery box bench, I ran out of 3/4 inch plywood, but I had some 3/8 inch plywood, so I ended up cutting a couple of those pieces and just laminating them together, and it came out to just the right thickness to match the other 3/4 inch, in that area. Might be just a slight bit thicker, but nothing you can really notice. And here's another look of getting the trim installed on that bench top as well. And again, this bench top is just laying there. I don't have the piano hinges. yet to install these against the wall. Okay, both bench tops are done now, except for attaching the bench tops. I guess the next step would be to head to the big box store and pick a couple of those up. This section over here to the right of the battery box bench is going to be the bathroom area, and I'm going to frame that out, and then the shelf area on the right, I'm going to frame that into a closed pantry area. Okay, this is as far as I got in this video. I still have a lot more to do, but really at this point I could use this camper for camping if I wanted to, since I've got the bed platform is in place, got the benches in place, and I even have an area between the benches where I could throw another mattress if I wanted to. But this is as far as I got, so stay tuned for the next camper build video where I start framing out this bathroom area, and I'll probably work on a couple of other projects inside the camper as well. So I'll talk to you guys later.